We have all met someone who seemed perfect at first. Charming words, intense attention, a smile that made you feel special. They moved fast, said things that sounded true, and made your world feel brighter. But slowly, the light shifted. Small slips became excuses. Praise turned into criticism. The person who once admired you now seemed to minimize you. This is how many stories begin with a narcissist. It isn't always dramatic at first. It's quiet, smooth, seductive, and that is why it is so dangerous. Narcissism is not just arrogance, it is a pattern of using others to meet a hollow need inside. The narcissist needs control, admiration, and constant validation. To get these, they become skilled at reading people. Your hopes, your fears, your soft places, they find where you are kind, and they slowly bend you toward their will. To survive their influence, we must first understand the steps they use. We must learn their script, their patterns, and the way they turn love into leverage. It always starts with a beautiful beginning. They make you feel seen in a way you may never have felt before. They listen with exaggerated interest. They mirror your words. They flatter you with details, as if they know your deepest self. This is called love bombing. It is an intense, early shower of attention meant to form a fast bond. When you are newly bonded to someone, your brain relaxes. Oxytocin rises. You feel trust. You let your guard down. That moment is their doorway. Once you are hooked, they slowly change the rules. After the warmth comes a subtle test, a joke pushed too far, a cutting remark disguised as humor. They watch your reaction. They measure how much you will accept. If you react, they apologize and promise change, often with even more charm. This is how they expand their control. Step by step, they create a new normal where small betrayals are excused. Narcissists are masters of confusion. They tell different stories to different people. To you, they are tender. To others, they may be distant or grandiose. This inconsistency keeps you off balance. When you try to understand what happened, they reshape reality. You're remembering, it wrong, they might say? That didn't happen. This gaslighting is not a single act. It's a strategy to make you doubt your mind. Doubt is powerful. When you doubt your own memory, your sense of truth weakens. You begin to seek external proof of what is right, and the person in front of you becomes the source of truth. That is how control deepens. Narcissists also use praise as currency. They give you high praise when you act as they want. They withdraw praise when you disagree. Approval becomes conditional. You learn to perform to regain warmth. The performance becomes exhausting. You start to lose track of who you were before their applause mattered. They will also isolate you. They subtly pull your world inward. Criticism of your friends or jokes that create distance. From loved ones, you don't need them. They say, "You don't understand me like I understand you." Isolation severs the safety net that would normally help you see their patterns. Another tool is projection. They accuse you of the very faults they carry. If they are selfish, they will call you selfish. If they are dishonest, they will call you the liar. This muddles responsibility. It keeps you busy defending yourself instead of confronting their behavior. These tactics work because they are personal. They are not random abuses. They are targeted. The narcissist studies your softest places and uses them like keys. Your compassion, your loyalty, your desire to be loved, all turned into tools. One of the hardest parts is how they manage to keep hope alive. They promise change. They speak of future happiness. They might show brief moments of kindness, enough to remind you of the person you first fell for. These small glimpses become the bait that keeps you returning. You say to yourself, "They were kind once. They can be kind again." The cycle then takes shape. Idealize, devalue, discard. First, you are the sun, adored and polished. Then slowly, the clouds gather. You become the target of blame, or of mocking or silence. Finally, when you are drained, they discard you or move on, and often, soon after, they seek a new source of admiration to begin again. Surviving. This cycle requires more than anger. It requires clarity. You must learn To see patterns instead of excuses, you must separate their story from your truth. You must learn to hold your memory without letting their version of events overwrite it. So how does this manipulation play out in daily life? It seems small at first, a comment about your friends, a line about your work. But over months it becomes a web. You start to feel you cannot do anything right. You become anxious. You keep apologizing. What was once charming becomes a slow erosion. Many victims do not recognize abuse because it defies the image of violence. It is not always loud. It is often private and quiet. The person who loves you in public may control you in private. This secrecy is another form of power. To break free, you need strategies. First, name the pattern. Call the behavior what it is. Second, keep records, small notes, texts, or recordings that remind you of reality. Third, rebuild connections to people who see you clearly. And fourth, practice saying no to small manipulations until saying no to larger ones becomes possible. You are not broken for being manipulated. Fear, isolation, and the weight of love make us all vulnerable, but knowledge is a tool. Understanding the methods clears the fog. And once the fog lifts, the path to freedom becomes visible. This is where the story continues. We will now explore each tactic more closely: the love bombing, the gaslighting, the idealize devalue cycle, and how each one affects your mind. We will learn practical steps to protect yourself and to recover if you have been trapped. If you are listening, remember this: you are not alone and you are not to blame. The designs of manipulation are cruel, but they are also predictable, and predictability is something we can use to our advantage. How narcissists control you, the psychology of manipulation, and escape now. Let's go deeper into how narcissistic manipulation really works, not in theory, but in real life, inside the human mind. Every narcissist follows a cycle. It's a hidden system, predictable, methodical, and emotionally draining. Once you recognize it, you can see the pattern in almost every story. The cycle has three main stages: idealize, devalue, and discard. Let's break them down. Idealization, the trap of perfection at first. They make you feel like you've found your soulmate. They mirror your energy, your dreams, even your sense of humor. It feels magical. The connection is instant. You think, finally, someone who understands me. This stage releases chemicals in your brain, dopamine and oxytocin. These are the same chemicals that make us feel pleasure, trust, and love. That's why it's so powerful. You're not just falling for a person, you're falling for a chemical high. And like any high, your brain starts craving more. The narcissist knows this. They control the dosage. They decide when to give affection and when to pull it away. This creates confusion, a push and pull that strengthens emotional addiction. You start chasing their validation, hoping to feel that first high again, but you never do because it was never real. It was a crafted illusion. Devaluation. The slow collapse once. They feel secure that you're attached. The warmth fades. The compliments stop. The tone changes. You start hearing small jabs, sarcastic comments, silent treatment. They may criticize your looks, your habits, or your intelligence. You begin to question yourself. You ask, what did I do wrong? But you didn't do anything wrong. They just switched roles from lover to controller. This is where they gain real power. You feel desperate to restore what you lost. You over-explain. You apologize. You try harder. Each time you chase their approval, they pull further away. This makes you emotionally dependent. Your self-worth becomes linked to their opinion, and that's how they win, by making you doubt your value unless it's given by them. They might even say things like, "You're too sensitive. You always overreact. I never said that." This is gaslighting, and it's their favorite weapon. It makes you question your reality, and when you question your reality, you become easier to control. Discard. The emotional collapse when they feel they've drained you or found someone new. They detach. coldly, instantly. It's shocking how fast they turn off emotion. You're left broken, confused, searching for closure that never comes, but they move on, smiling, pretending nothing happened, and when you finally start healing, they might come back. A text, a call, a message saying, "I miss you." This is called hoovering. Like a vacuum, they try to suck you back in. Not because they love you, but because they want to see if they still have power. They feed on your reaction. Whether love or anger, it's still energy. To them, silence is the only true loss. Why the brain gets trapped. The psychology of this is complex but simple at its core. Your brain links pain and pleasure together. You remember both the affection and the abuse. This creates a loop of confusion. Trauma. Bonding. In trauma bonding, your nervous system adapts to chaos. You start mistaking intensity for intimacy. You think the highs and lows are proof of passion, but they're not. They're signs of control. Each time they hurt you, your brain releases stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline. Then when they apologize or show affection, dopamine floods back in. The brain links both experiences together. It becomes a chemical trap. Pain mixed with pleasure. That's why people often say, "I know they're bad for me, but I can't leave." It's not weakness. It's neurological conditioning. Understanding this breaks the illusion. You can't fight what you don't see. But once you name it, the control begins to lose power. The mask. They wear a narcissist doesn't always look cruel on the surface. Some are charming, intelligent, generous in public. They can be successful leaders, artists, partners, or even healers. But behind that mask is fragility, deep insecurity hiding under confidence. They fear being ordinary. They fear being unseen, so they build an identity that feeds on admiration. Every interaction becomes a transaction. They give only to get something back. Their love is not love. It's strategy. It's a way to maintain the illusion of superiority. But this illusion is fragile. That's why they react so violently to criticism. Even small things, a joke, a correction, can cause rage or withdrawal. This is called narcissistic injury, when their false self cracks for even a moment, and that's when you see the truth behind the mask, the emptiness, the fear, the panic to regain control. Recognizing the red flags. How can you spot a narcissist early? Look for patterns: too much, too soon, excessive attention, gifts and promises, overconfidence paired with lack of empathy, inconsistency between their words and actions. They interrupt your boundaries or personal space. They never take responsibility. It's always someone else's fault. When you set limits, they guilt trip or mock you. If someone constantly turns your feelings into proof of your weakness, beware. Healthy love doesn't demand you shrink. It helps you expand. You are not meant to stay trapped in someone else's cycle. You deserve calm, not chaos. Clarity, not confusion. Mutual respect, not control. And even if your story has been filled with pain, it can still end in power. Because understanding the psychology of manipulation is not just survival. It's liberation, breaking free. The psychology of healing and escape. When you finally see through the illusion, it's both painful and powerful. You begin to understand that what you felt was real, but the person you loved was not who they appeared to be. This realization is the beginning of freedom. But breaking free from a narcissist isn't like ending a normal relationship. It's like escaping a spell, one made of emotions, chemicals, and memories. Your body, your mind, even your nervous system have been trained to react to them. You've been wired to expect their approval, their anger, their silence. So when you walk away, it feels like withdrawal. You're not just missing the person, you're missing the chemical storm they created. That's why healing takes time. It's not weakness, it's recovery from emotional addiction. The fog after leaving. After you leave, you might feel strange confusion. You question yourself. Was it really that bad? Maybe I overreacted. This is the fog of trauma. Your brain is trying to make sense of chaos. It searches for the happy moments to balance the pain. But remember, those Moments were part of the trap. They were not proof of love. They were tools of control. Each time you miss them, remind yourself, you're not missing them, you're missing the version of yourself you thought you could be with them, and that version never had the chance to exist. The stages of healing, there, are stages you'll walk through, not in order, but in cycles. Shock, realizing how deeply you were manipulated. Grief, mourning what never truly existed. Anger, awakening to injustice and betrayal. Clarity, learning to see patterns instead of pain. Rebuilding, finding yourself again, piece by piece. Healing is not a straight line. Some days you'll feel strong, other days empty. Both are normal. The emptiness means space is opening inside you, space for peace, for growth, for truth. Rebuilding self-worth. Narcissistic control destroys self-worth. It makes you believe love must be earned, not given. So healing starts by relearning the truth. You were never unworthy. You were manipulated. Start by listening to your own voice. Again, write your thoughts, record your feelings. Notice the moments when you apologize for existing, and stop. You have nothing to prove. Surround yourself with reality. Friends who tell you the truth, even when it hurts. Books, therapy, silence. All of these are bridges back to yourself. And slowly, you'll notice something. You'll start to breathe without waiting for permission. You'll start to smile without fear of judgment. You'll start to recognize the person you were before they entered your life. That's not just healing. That's resurrection. The neuroscience of letting go isn't only emotional. It's biological. The brain forms pathways of attachment. Every message, every apology, every argument, it all becomes part of a loop. To break the loop, you must create new patterns. When you stop reacting, the old circuits weaken. When you focus on new habits, your brain rewires itself. That's why silence is powerful. No contact means no fuel for the pattern. Each day of silence builds strength. At first, it hurts. Then it heals. Science calls this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and grow. Every boundary you set, every no you say, strengthens your neural defense. You're not just healing emotionally, you're reprogramming your brain. The power of boundaries after a narcissist. Boundaries feel strange. You may feel guilty for saying no. You may fear being called selfish. But boundaries are not walls. They are doors, doors that you control. A boundary says, "This is where I end and you begin." It protects your energy.
Your peace and your progress. Without boundaries,
Love becomes chaos. With them, love becomes choice. Start small. Don't reply to messages that drain you. Limit access to your time and mind. And remember, silence is not weakness, it's self-respect. Reconnecting with reality after manipulation. Your sense of truth may feel broken. You might second-guess yourself in simple decisions. That's normal. You've been trained to distrust your own mind. Reconnection starts with small truths. Go outside. Feel the air. Touch something real. Ground yourself in the present. Say to yourself, "I'm here. I'm safe. I'm real." Over time, your confidence will rebuild, and you'll begin to see the narcissist not as a mystery, but as a mirror, reflecting their pain. You're not your worth. The shift, there comes a moment in recovery, quiet but profound, when you no longer crave their apology. You no longer need them to admit the truth, because you've already found it. Yourself, that's the turning point. The moment you realize the closure you seek was never theirs to give. It was always yours to claim. When you reach this point, you'll notice your world getting wider again. Music sounds different. Time slows down. You begin to see beauty in small things. That's what peace feels like. The mind, once manipulated, becomes the greatest teacher of all, because you have seen what control looks like, and you'll never fall for it again. The pain becomes wisdom. The silence becomes strength. And the story that once broke you becomes the story that saves someone else. The awakening, rebuilding the self and transforming pain into power healing. From a narcissist isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of a new one. The story where you return home to yourself. For a long time, you were trapped in survival mode. You learned to read moods before faces, to predict storms before words. But now, you're learning something far more powerful: peace. Peace doesn't mean silence. It means no longer needing to fight for clarity, no longer explaining your worth to someone determined not to see it. You begin to live for yourself, not out of revenge, but out of understanding. You realize that love without respect is just control wearing a mask, and slowly, everything changes. The mirror turns inward at first. You might not recognize yourself. The quiet feels foreign. The freedom feels heavy. But underneath it all, your real self, the one you hid to survive, begins to breathe again. You start remembering things you used to love. Music sounds like music again. Laughter doesn't feel forced. And in small, steady moments you realize, I made it out. But healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means transforming. You take the lessons, not the pain. You carry the wisdom, not the wound. Understanding the cycle. The more you understand how narcissistic cycles work, the more immune you become to them. They seek power through confusion. You find power through awareness. They manipulate by fear. You protect yourself by truth. You learn to recognize red flags before they turn into chains. The charm, the control, the sudden distance, it all becomes visible because now you've learned the language of manipulation, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's your strength now. Clarity. Forgiving yourself, one of the hardest parts of recovery isn't forgiving them. It's forgiving yourself. You might ask, how could I let this happen? Why didn't I see the signs? But remember, you were not weak. You were human. You were someone who believed in love, and they used that belief against you. Forgiveness doesn't excuse what happened. It releases you from carrying their guilt. You don't owe them forgiveness. You owe yourself freedom. Rediscovering identity. After long manipulation, identity feels like shattered glass. Pieces of who you were scattered in their shadow. But you don't rebuild by going back. You rebuild by growing forward. Try new things, even small ones. Change your space, your routine, your story. Because every new experience rewires your sense of self. You'll notice how the fear begins to fade. You'll start trusting your intuition again. And when you finally meet someone kind, you'll know kindness isn't boring, it's peace disguised as calm. The science of growth. Every trauma survivor carries a hidden superpower: neuroplasticity. The brain that was rewired by pain can be rewired by purpose. Meditation, journaling, therapy, movement. These are not cliches. They're science-backed tools that rebuild your neural pathways. Each time you choose calm over chaos, you're literally healing your brain. Your mind becomes sharper, your emotions steadier, your sleep deeper. You start living, not reacting. You stop surviving and start creating. The return of purpose. There comes a moment, often quiet, sometimes sudden, when you wake up and realize you no longer think about them every day. Your energy is yours again. Your thoughts are yours again. And you feel something you haven't felt in a long time: curiosity. You start to wonder what's next, what you could build, who you could become. That's purpose, the flame that never truly went out, only dimmed beneath their shadow. Now it burns again, steady and strong, helping others heal as you grow. You'll meet others still trapped in their storm. You'll recognize the same look in their eyes, the confusion, the guilt, the exhaustion, and when you share your story, you'll see how your pain becomes someone else's roadmap. You'll speak truth where they heard them. Lies, you'll give hope where they saw none. That's how healing multiplies. Voice becomes a light, and that light becomes a movement. The final realization: you are not the same person who once begged to be. Understood, you are wiser, quieter, stronger. The scars you carry are not signs of weakness. They are proof that you healed in places others tried to break. You no longer chase validation. You no longer explain your worth. You walk differently, not with fear, but with awareness. And when someone tries to control your light again, you'll smile, not with anger but with knowing. Because you've been to the dark, and you built your own way out. The rebirth in the end. You realize something simple yet profound. The narcissist didn't destroy you. They revealed you. They exposed your strength, your empathy, your resilience. They forced you to confront yourself. And in that confrontation, you found power you didn't know existed. You are not broken. You are rewritten. And your story, your real story, begins. Here, this is not about revenge. It's about evolution. You don't need to prove anything anymore. Your peace is your power. Your silence is your victory. And your healing is the loudest thing they'll never understand.